Hey guys, this video is a short introduction into stopwatch time studies. I've always really enjoyed this topic for a few different reasons. First being, I think it's fairly intuitive. Second, it is very applicable to industry. In my fourth year here at Cal Poly studying IE, I'm still using time studies regularly in my courses. I performed time studies while doing a project with the health center on campus, where our goal was to implement self-check-in systems. This, of course, being before they had them, which they currently do. I'm currently using time studies in my simulation class, as well as planning on using time studies for my senior project next quarter. Basically, I believe very strongly that time studies are an essential tool for an IE to know. Time studies are useful for a variety of different applications. For instance, say a new method or a new process is being implemented, time studies are helpful in developing standard operating procedures for future workers to follow. Time studies are also useful when you're trying to see what is causing a bottleneck, trying to pinpoint exactly where the bottleneck is occurring, or even to derive a standard wage for a new job. But before I go into some more detail, I want to let Liz give you a little bit more of an overview as to what a stopwatch time study is all about.
So the steps in a stopwatch study are kind of illustrated here. The first is, and I'm going to go through each and kind of give you a little more information about each one. So the first is to watch the operations. So the idea is that when you're watching the operations, you've got to make sure the methods are optimum. And then you also have to really understand what they're doing. Watching for unusual events, like do they have to fill up a tape dispenser like a couple times an hour? Or do they have to walk and go get some materials? Or does the supervisor come and interrupt them? So these are the kinds of things you really want to understand the operations and know exactly what's going on. So after you've done that, and that's going to take a while, you need to actually sit around and watch them work. The next thing you need to do is determine the elements. And I don't know if you remember about elements, but what they are is little parts of the job that you're going to time. You could time the whole job from start to finish, right? But if there's like an interruption or something and you're like, oh my gosh, that's not at all like the previous one. So you want to really time little sections of it. And these are elements. You define these elements. So this needs to be short enough to be valuable, so that it's not just a completely long, like, oh, I'm just going to time the whole thing, and long enough to work the stopwatch. So you can't be like a 1/10 of a second. That's way too short. So a couple seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds is a good amount of time to be long enough for you to actually take a reading in an accurate way. You also want to have, it's a good idea with elements to have a clear stop and end indication. Something like a sound that happens, or they particularly put down a screwdriver or whatever, but really defining it so that you can do it over and over and over again. So after you've done that, you have a list of elements. And the next thing is to determine how many cycles to go through on these elements. In general, the more the better. Just if you can get 300, that'll be better. But we always want to balance the cost of the number of cycles versus the increase in accuracy. So 100 cycles watching, you're not going to get a lot more in 100 than you would have in 50 or 20. And generally speaking, because of the central limit theorem, we often think 30 is a good number. Let's just go with 30. That's a good number. Let's just use it. So if you can take 30 cycles, that's great. Again, mostly people don't do that. 10 is a common number of cycles, and that's really trying to balance the cost of doing the cycles versus accuracy. What I mean by cycles is watching somebody do the thing over and over and over again and timing it each time they do it. So you're going to time it each time they do it, you're going to do it 10 times. Now, if you're doing a project for IME 223 and it doesn't seem like 10 times is even possible, like you don't have that much raw material, for 239, then, that's fine. Just do as many as you can to get practiced at it. Once you do this, then you actually go and you time the elements. So I'm going to time the operator. You're going to spend time with it. You're going to tell the operator what you're doing. You're going to sit there. You're going to watch for unusual items, make notes, do all kinds of things, and have a sheet in front of you. Or if you're doing it within an iPhone or something, make sure you actually making notes about what's going on so that you really understand what's happening. So you take all of your time. So you observe your 10 cycles. The next thing you do is you calculate the cycle time for one cycle, or for each element in the cycle you calculate an average. So what you're going to do is you're going to average times over elements and add those average times up. From there, you want to determine the rating. If you remember, this is how fast does somebody work. 100 is a normal rating. 120 to 170 is kind of the range. 70. Most people don't work that much more than 120. And this would be if an operator is moving quickly or slowly. You just kind of make your judgment call. And you need to make sure it's a trained operator, so there's no learning curve going on, because learning curve, somebody would be slow for sure, but that's kind of common. You want to make sure that it is actually somebody who's trained in what they're doing. After that, sort of in parallel, you need to indicate the percentages for the allowances. Like what kind of breaks do they do? If you remember, there's often a sheet that has a standard allowance for breaks, and then for tedious work or for hard labor, you add particular percentages. So you end up with, say, 20% as the allowances, and then you take that and then what you do then is you actually, from the data of the observed time, which is OB here, observed time times the rating, which is R, divided by 100 is equal to the normal time. So you've done that calculation. So now you have the normal time for this particular operation. Then what you do is you take the allowances that you've calculated, and you take the normal time, and then you add the normal time plus the allowance. And I have allowances in here as a percentage. That's why it's divided by 100. But that will get you the standard time. That's what you need to get oh gosh, go backwards. When you're getting to this value, how long does it take? You need to do all of those steps to figure out how long it takes.
Okay, so hopefully you guys have a little bit better of an understanding now of what a time study is. The next video I'm going to be going over different types of elements, value added versus non-value added, 2 different methods of timing, an example, and a short assignment for you guys to